Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. And Monday Night Raw just ended like 6 minutes ago, and you all know how this show is every single week. Show was fucking awful tonight, god awful. WWE is just, they keep booking rematches every single week for Monday Night Raw, and it is getting repetitive. This show is absolutely fucking dreadful every single week. I don't know anymore. I don't know with this show. It's like creative, Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, and the creative team that does the show, they don't give a shit no more. They don't give a shit on booking a decent, good Monday Night Raw. I mean, when was the last decent Monday Night Raw that we saw? I can't remember. Show fucking sucks. But what do we see tonight? We saw Randy Orton versus Xavier Woods. We had Reginald. Yes, Reginald. Versus Shayna Baszler. Which I am not even going to talk about that match. We saw Sheamus doing double duty tonight, where he took on Ricochet and Humberto Carrilo. We had another rematch, Cedric Alexander versus Shelton Benjamin. In the main event, we saw Drew McIntyre versus KOFI Kingston. And also the Raw Tag Team titles were on the line, where Styles and Omos defend them against Elias and Jaxson Ryker. Overall, Monday Night Raw fucking sucks. Show sucked tonight. Same rematches that we see every single week. I mean, Randy Orton and Xavier Woods, didn't we see that like 2 weeks ago already? We had Nikki Cross in another Beat the Clock match. Yeah, let's, where she ended up taking on Charlotte this week. Yeah, let's take Rhea Ripley. Let's take Rhea Ripley out like what we saw last week and just add Charlotte into that. Oh, how original. How original, Vince, Bruce, or whoever is behind in the creative department for Monday Night Raw. How original. But anyways, let's start the review. So Monday Night Bore. Yes, Monday Night Bore opened up with Corey Graves. Corey Graves ended up welcoming us to this horrible show. He was joined by Byron Saxton and the new color commentator for Monday Night Raw, Jimmy Smith. Of course, Adnan Virk ended up getting fired, which I'm like, thank God, because he was absolutely fucking terrible on commentary. So he was replaced by Jimmy Smith. Corey Graves ended up introducing Jimmy Smith, ended up welcoming him. And Jimmy Smith on commentary ended up saying that he's excited to be here and that his job is to honor the fans, the superstars, and to have a little fun. And I gotta say, Jimmy Smith tonight, for his first show on Monday Night Raw tonight, commentating, I thought he did a decent job. He was a whole lot better than Adnan Virk. So I'm gonna give Jimmy Smith, a chance. This was his first show, and I thought he did decent. Let's see how he does in the next coming weeks. So, but I enjoyed him on commentary tonight. So then we went to the ring, and we had Miz TV. Miz and Morrison were in there. The Miz ended up giving himself a big welcome back. And this was his first appearance since he lost to Damian Priest in the Lumberjack match at WrestleMania Backlash, where he was attacked by zombies. So Miz ended up apologizing for that match. And he was like, that match. And he was shaking his head. And he was like, that match. He was injured. He ended up saying that for the first time in his illustrious career, he was injured. And Morrison ended up showing off the drip stick that he bought. And this drip stick was a pull toy. I'm like, they call it a drip stick? Might as well have just called it a dipstick. This whole segment was fucking awful. And Morrison was wearing a garlic necklace. He was like, oh, this is to keep the zombies away. Morrison, don't you realize that wearing a garlic necklace is to keep vampires away, not zombies? Whoever wrote this segment did not know that garlic keeps away vampires. So The Miz ended up saying, while he was gone, he had an infamy. And that was that he had to get back to Raw because the show is going back on the road soon. And that he knew everyone wants to see him live in person. I don't think so, Miz. Nobody is paying money to come to the show to see you. He ended up saying that the other part of his infamy is how he realized that he's accomplished so much in his career that he has to give back. Like helping Morrison and his guest. And do you know who his guest was? If this segment wasn't as awful as it was when it started, it got a whole lot worse. His guest was Charlotte Flair. So Charlotte ended up coming out as the ratings were probably dropping already. The Miz and Morrison were jamming to Charlotte's music. They were dancing like, and the Miz going, da-da! Or Morrison, whoever was doing it, who cares? So Charlotte ended up coming into the ring, and the first thing she ended up saying, oh, what's that smell? And the smell was Morrison's garlic necklace that he was wearing. So Miz and Morrison ended up laughing at a joke on Charlotte becoming a 14-time champion. And Charlotte was asking Miz and Morrison if they're done. And she was calling them idiots. She went on about how Rhea Ripley's fairy tale is over. And that will turn to a nightmare. As she sends Ripley to hell in 3 weeks. And then, of course, Rhea Ripley ended up coming out. Rhea Ripley ended up saying that Charlotte can go to hell. So Charlotte and Rhea Ripley then faced off. Miz ended up telling them to calm down. So Rhea Ripley and Charlotte end up sitting down. Rhea Ripley ended up saying about how she will beat Charlotte and remain the Raw Women's Champion. Charlotte then went on to say that Rhea Ripley couldn't even beat Nikki Cross last week. So we got a replay of the Beat the Clock match last week, which had a 2-minute limit, where of course Nikki Cross ended up beating Rhea Ripley. So Charlotte ended up asking Rhea Ripley what makes her think she can beat her if she couldn't beat Nikki Cross. So then Nikki Cross ended up coming out. Nikki Cross ended up apologizing for interrupting. And she ended up saying that she is a big fan of Miz TV and that she couldn't wait any longer. Cross went on to say that she beat Rhea Ripley last week. And it would only be fair if she was the first person to challenge the winner of their match at Hell in a Cell. So Charlotte ended up saying that if life was fair, she would be the champion right now. So Rhea Ripley admitted that Nikki Cross earned her respect. So Charlotte ended up saying that she could beat Nikki Cross in 1 minute. So Nikki Cross ended up slapping Charlotte in the mouth. And Charlotte ended up saying to Nikki Cross, oh, it's on. And then she called Nikki Cross a little troll. And that was that. That was how the segment ended. But awful segment. Just awful. With Morrison wearing the garlic necklace. Oh, is to keep vampires, zombies, aliens, whatever away. I mean, the Miz, shouldn't the Miz, he looking all zombified in this segment? Well, yeah, just people would just be laughing at that. I know I would be laughing at it. You know, if the Miz looked zombified after he got attacked by zombies at WrestleMania Backlash. Awful segment. And then we had Nikki Cross versus Charlotte. Beat the clock. You know, just take out Rhea Ripley and add Charlotte in it. So we had 2 minutes on the clock, just like last week. Match ended up starting. Nikki Cross went right to the floor. She was taunting Charlotte, doing the whole thing that she did last week with the... And then Charlotte ended up going out. Nikki Cross ended up going back into the ring. Charlotte was talking some trash to Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross ended up going back out to the floor. She was playing more mind games for Charlotte. So Charlotte ended up chasing Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross ended up going behind Rhea Ripley, who was sitting at the commentary table. So Charlotte and Rhea Ripley have a face-off and have words. And there was 49 seconds left on the clock as the referee was counting. Charlotte came back in. Charlotte ended up catching Nikki Cross and delivering a knee strike. Nikki Cross ended up shoving Charlotte off, but Charlotte ended up leveling her with a clothesline. There was 30 seconds left in the match. So Charlotte ended up taking Nikki Cross to the top. Nikki Cross ended up fighting back and ended up hitting a tornado DDT. So Charlotte then ended up trying to go for the figure four. Nikki Cross ended up resisting from being locked in the figure four. And the clock expired and Nikki Cross ended up winning. Post-match, Rhea Ripley was smiling at ringside. She ended up applauding Nikki Cross for the win. So Charlotte ended up seething, and she ended up blaming all this on Rhea Ripley. She was like, "This is your fault! This is your fault!" Charlotte crying like a baby to Rhea Ripley. So Nikki Cross was just bouncing around on stage, being excited, and that was that. Overall, this was a waste of time. I mean, happy that Nikki Cross got the win because she hasn't been on TV since the Royal Rumble. I mean, she was in the Lumberjack match 2 weeks ago. Last week, she's facing Rhea Ripley in this Beat the Clock match, and now this week she had Charlotte. But to me, it was a waste of time. So then we had Matt Riddle and Damian Priest backstage, and they were talking about the upcoming return to WWE, going on tour, 25 city tour. So Matt Riddle was learning some Spanish. So Randy Orton ended up showing up. Matt Riddle ended up saying that he missed Orton so much. So Damian Priest then walked off. And Orton ended up bringing up on how Matt Riddle used his RKO last week. Riddle apologized to Orton, and he ended up saying that he isn't sure what came over him, and that he just did the RKO out of nowhere. So Orton ended up saying that Matt Riddle and Xavier Woods had a great match, and Riddle impressed him. But he ended up saying that there are a few things to work on. Orton ended up saying that if they're going to do this tag team thing, they have to do it right. So Orton invited Riddle to come to ringside tonight to watch his match against Xavier Woods. Matt Riddle ended up just being all excited, and that was that. Matt Riddle ended up doing some comedy on his scooter, and that was that. And then we had Xavier Woods versus Randy Orton. Was a okay match here. So the match ended up starting with Xavier Woods and Randy Orton going at it. Orton ended up looking to take Xavier Woods out early. Xavier Woods ended up countering Orton and took him down. And Orton ended up dropping Xavier Woods face first over the turnbuckle. Xavier Woods then rolled to the floor as Randy Orton ended up falling out of the ring. Orton then slammed Xavier Woods face first into the announce table several times. And Orton came back and slammed Xavier Woods on top of the announce table. And he got back into the ring. And then Monday Night Raw went to commercial. Then when Monday Night Raw came back from commercial, Randy Orton was still grounding at Xavier Woods. And Xavier Woods got up. He started snapping Orton's arm over his shoulder. Xavier Woods ended up delivering a jumping kick to Orton's head. Woods ended up mounting some offense, but Orton ended up cutting him off with a knee. Woods then ran the ropes, ended up nailing a rolling elbow to Orton. Woods ended up delivering the sliding DDT to Orton. He went for the cover, but Randy Orton ended up kicking out at 2. Woods ended up mounting Orton in the corner with some right hands. Orton did a cheap shot, and the referee didn't see it. So Orton then brought Xavier Woods out of the corner, delivered a powerbomb to Woods in the middle of the ring. So Orton went for the cover. Xavier Woods ended up kicking out. So Orton ended up sending Xavier Woods out to the apron. Matt Riddle was running his mouth at ringside. So Orton ended up going for the second rope for the draping DDT. And Woods ended up countering that. He ended up dropping Orton by his arm. Xavier Woods then applied the Fujiwara armbar on Orton. Orton ended up crawling. He finally got to the bottom rope to break the Fujiwara armbar. So Orton ended up going for the draping DDT. And Orton ended up dropping down to the mat. Started pounding on Xavier Woods. Woods ended up getting up. He ended up blocking the RKO with a backslide, which Orton ended up kicking out at 2. So Orton then ended up catching Xavier Woods, and he did Matt Riddle's finishing move, the Bro Derek. So Orton catched Xavier Woods and delivered the Bro Derek, and he ended up covering Xavier Woods, and there you go. Randy Orton ended up winning the match. Post-match, Matt Riddle ended up coming in with a scooter. He was riding around in the ring. And he was happy that Orton ended up using the Bro Derek. And that was that. But Orton hitting the Bro Derek, I thought it was decent. You know, how Orton ended up hitting the Bro Derek. So overall, it was an okay match between Xavier Woods and Randy Orton. And then we had MVP. He was leading a group of women into his locker room. Bobby Lashley, the WWE champion, ended up walking in, and MVP ended up introducing him. And the women were all into Bobby Lashley. You know, Bobby Lashley, WWE is portraying him as the Godfather, where, you know, the Godfather was like, all aboard the Ho train. This is exactly what they're doing with Bobby Lashley here. Even though the women aren't hoes, you know, it's probably, they should have Bobby Lashley go, all aboard the almighty train. That's what they should do. Because clearly, Bobby Lashley's acting like the Godfather. So, Bobby Lashley was wearing like this darkish, reddish suit, which looked nice. And then we went to, this was embarrassing. Reginald versus Shayna Baszler. I'm not even going to talk about this match because this match was fucking terrible. It was nothing but Reginald doing Cirque du Soleil flips. There was points where Reginald was, you know, trying to do a move. And I gotta admit, there was a point in the match where Reginald went to the top and delivered a moonsault, which Shayna Baszler moved out of the way of it. Which I have to say, Reginald, he does a pretty decent moonsault off the top. It's better looking than Charlotte's. But Reginald won the match because Shayna Baszler ended up applying the Karafuda clutch from behind. And then once again, just like 2 weeks ago, the ring post exploded out of nowhere. The fire comes out of the ring post. Reginald took advantage of the distraction and rolled up Shayna Baszler. So Reginald ended up winning. Oh my God, how Shayna Baszler has fallen. Shayna Baszler is nothing but a jobber now. I'm sorry to say that. It sucks. It sucks what they did to Shayna Baszler. Post-match, Reginald ended up running away to the back. Reginald ended up joining Nia Jax backstage. She was so happy. She was excited for Reginald to win the match. So Shayna Baszler was showing the screen, and she was asking, what the hell was Nia Jax doing? So that was that. But overall, awful match. Reginald doing nothing but Cirque du Soleil flips, and then that moonsault off the top. So then we went to Kevin Patrick. Kevin Patrick was backstage with Drew McIntyre. McIntyre ended up saying to Kevin Patrick that tonight is all about him and Kofi. No MVP or Bobby Lashley. None of that outside interference. So McIntyre ended up giving Kofi some praise. He ended up saying that he likes Kofi and that he respects him. But tonight he's going to do what Kofi's not willing to do. And that's run through him. And then get back his WWE Championship. So that was that. So that was the main event. McIntyre versus Kofi Kingston. And then we had T-Bar and Mace. I don't know why WWE is still keeping Dominik Dijakovic and Dio Madden's names as T-Bar and Mace when Retribution has been broken up. Can't we just repackage them and change their names back to Dio Madden and Dominik Dijakovic? Why are they still using T-Bar and Mace? I don't fucking get it. When Retribution has been broken up for how many months already? But this match was boring. Match was terrible. T-Bar and Mace ended up winning the match. It was an easy win for them. So we had T-Bar and Mace deliver a double team finisher to Grand Metalik and Lince Dorado. Mace ended up pinning Grand Metalik for the win. So that was that. T-Bar and Mace ended up winning. Yes, sounds like an interesting match, right? T-Bar and Mace and Lucha House Party. Who was excited to see the Lucha House Party? So then we went to Sheamus. Sheamus came out. Sheamus was bragging on his win. Sheamus ended up saying that he can't wait to go on the road as the United States Champion. He ended up talking about Ricochet and Humberto Carrilo trying to embarrass him. He ended up saying that maybe they should receive participation trophies because that's the closest they will get to the United States Championship. So Sheamus ended up showing us how he defeated Humberto Carrilo last week and that he was attacked after the match by Ricochet to prevent an attack on Humberto Carrilo. And then Humberto and Ricochet ended up double teaming and taking out Sheamus last week. So Sheamus ended up asking if Humberto and Ricochet look like championship material. So Sheamus ended up saying that where he comes from, they'd be scumbags. Two people jumping one. So Sheamus ended up saying that he created the open challenge so he could find someone worthy for a shot at the United States Championship. He ended up saying that Ricochet and Humberto just proved they're not fit to lace his boots. He ended up saying that he's not going to face them 2-on-1, but he will face them one-on-one, back-to-back, because that's the type of champion that he is. Sheamus went on to say that when he's done, he will send Ricochet and Humberto back to where they came from, in catering. So Sheamus then ended up asking, who will be the first one to step up, where it's Ricochet or Humberto. So Ricochet was the first one to come out. So it was Sheamus versus Ricochet. So the match ended up starting. Sheamus ended up going to work on Ricochet. Ricochet ended up kicking Sheamus, but Sheamus ended up kneeing Ricochet. Ricochet countered and ended up dumping Sheamus over the top rope out to the floor. Ricochet went for a baseball slide, but Sheamus ended up blocking it. And he ended up launching Ricochet into the barricade with a fallaway slam. Sheamus then brought Ricochet back into the ring. He went to the top. Ricochet stumbled to his feet and Sheamus delivered a flying clothesline to Ricochet. So Humberto Carrillo ended up running down to the ring, to ringside. Ricochet took advantage of the distraction and he rolled up Sheamus. And there you go. Ricochet ended up winning the match. So Sheamus was pissed off. This was post-match. Sheamus was pissed off as Humberto Carrillo was taunting him from ringside. And Monday Night Raw went to commercial. So when Monday Night Raw came back from commercial, we had Sheamus versus Humberto Carrillo once again. So match ended up starting off with Sheamus rocking Carrillo into the corner. He leveled Humberto with a high knee. Sheamus was arguing with Ricochet. Carrillo ended up trying to fight out of the corner, but Sheamus kept control of the match. Sheamus walked right into a big boot from Humberto Carrillo, but Sheamus ended up dropping Carrillo from the corner. Sheamus took Humberto to the apron, but Carrillo ended up fighting back with elbows, and then the jawbreaker to Sheamus over the top rope. So Carrillo ended up fighting back through the ropes. Sheamus nailed the Irish Curse backbreaker to Carrillo in the middle of the ring. So Sheamus was kicking Humberto Carrillo around while he was down. And Sheamus delivered the 10 beats of the Boudin to Humberto Carrillo while he was on his knees. So it was back and forth between the both of them. Carrillo ended up moving out of the corner and Sheamus ran right into the ring post. Carrillo ended up nailing a spin kick to stun Sheamus. Carrillo ended up delivering another big kick to drop Sheamus. And Sheamus, from that, was bleeding from his nose from the spin kick that Carrillo did. So Sheamus ended up nailing a clothesline to knock Humberto Carrillo from the top rope out to the floor. He went out to the floor. Sheamus went out to the floor, delivered a boot to Ricochet. Sheamus ended up bringing Humberto Carrillo back into the ring as the referee was counting. Carrillo ended up leaping off the apron, knocked Sheamus face first into the announce table. And we had Sheamus end up catching the crossbody, and he ended up driving Humberto Carrillo into the mat. So we had Ricochet end up trying to come in. Sheamus ended up stopping Ricochet at the ropes, which Humberto ended up taking advantage, and he ended up hitting the drop kick to Sheamus, and then rolled up Sheamus. And there you go. Humberto Carrillo ended up winning the match. Post-match, Sheamus was yelling from the ring. He was pissed off, so Sheamus ended up taking 2 L's tonight. 2 losses. Ricochet and Humberto Carrillo. Just made Sheamus look stupid here tonight. But I'm like, oh yeah, just take the title off of Sheamus. Just take the United States Championship off of Sheamus after tonight. Lost to both Ricochet and Humberto. Then we got another vignette for Eva Marie, Evolution. Who gives a shit? Who cares? And then we had Lana and Naomi versus Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. Did you all enjoy this match? I didn't. Match was terrible. Match was god-awful. Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose end up winning. We had tag team champions, Natalya and Tamina, by commentary, watching the match. So Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose end up winning. They end up hitting a double team blockbuster on Lana. That was that. Awful. And then we had another rematch from last week. Shelton Benjamin versus Cedric Alexander. Nothing different in this match. Cedric Alexander won the match. He ended up hitting the neutralizer for the pin. And that was that. Cedric Alexander ended up winning. Quick match. So we had Elias hyping up Jaxson Ryker for their match tonight against Styles and Omos for the Raw Tag Team titles. So Jaxson Ryker was just staring off with a look on his face. Elias was going on to Ryker about how they're going into battle. And he ended up asking if Jaxson Ryker has ever been in a battle. So Ryker ended up looking at Elias, asking if he's ever been in a battle. And he was reminding himself that he is a war veteran. So that was that. And then we had Kevin Patrick. Kevin Patrick was backstage with KOFI Kingston. Kofi was cutting a promo on McIntyre and him winning the WWE Championship back from Bobby Lashley. And, you know, that was that. It was just Kofi Kingston cutting a promo on McIntyre. And then we had Elias and Jaxson Ryker versus Styles and Omos for the Raw Tag Team titles. This was a okay match here. The match started off with Elias working on Styles. He was attacking Styles and started unloading on him. He was delivering some chops and punches to Styles. Styles ended up turning around. He would end up dropping Elias with the right hand. Styles delivered a snap suplex to Elias, went for the cover. Elias kicked out at 2. Styles had some more offense on Elias, and he delivered another suplex to Elias, went for the cover, which Elias ended up kicking out at 1. Elias then ended up turning it around, ended up dropping a knee on Styles. Jaxson Ryker ended up tagging in, but Styles ended up fighting him off. Styles was Irish whipped into the corner, and he ended up going under the bottom rope. He then pulled Elias off the apron. He ended up sending Jaxson Ryker out to the floor. Styles ended up running and delivered a baseball slide to knock Jaxson Ryker and Elias back into the announce table. So Ryker ended up nailing a suplex to Styles for a 2 count. So Ryker ended up grounding Styles in the middle of the ring. Styles ended up fighting back. Ryker ended up putting him back down in the corner, sending him face first into the turnbuckle. So Elias was waiting for a tag. So was Omos, who hadn't been in the match so far. So Ryker ended up leaping for a tag. Elias ended up pulling his arm back, and Elias then dropped to the floor. So Styles ended up taking in Omos. Ryker was yelling at Elias, and Ryker was like, "What are you doing?" So Omos ended up coming from behind. He was staring down at Jaxson Ryker, and Omos grabbed Jaxson Ryker with a big claw over his head. He ended up shoving Jaxson Ryker into turnbuckles. He was throwing around Jaxson Ryker like a rag doll. So Omos then smashed Jaxson Ryker into the corner, launched him back into the turnbuckles. So Elias was smiling because he was watching from the stage. So Omos ended up running. He ended up smashing Jaxson Ryker in the corner again. So Styles came in. He nailed the phenomenal forearm to Jaxson Ryker. Styles went for the cover. And there you go. Styles and Omos win the match, retaining the Raw Tag Team titles. So post-match, Elias was looking on from the stage. He was nodding his head. And that was that. But it looks like Elias and Jaxson Ryker are no more. You know, Elias and Jaxson Ryker, they weren't a legit tag team. So Elias ends up getting away from Jaxson Ryker. So Elias is going back to being just a singles competitor. Same for Jaxson Ryker. Where does he land, Jaxson Ryker? Probably back in catering. And maybe that goes the same for Elias, too. Maybe they're both going back to catering. Overall, match was okay. So then we saw Reginald. More Reginald tonight. Reginald was backstage. He was limping when Nia Jax ended up approaching him. Nia Jax ended up asking Reginald if he's sure he wants to accept an invitation to Alexa's playground because she's weird. So Reginald ended up asking Nia Jax, what can go wrong? So Nia Jax ended up saying to him that a lot can go wrong. So Reginald was like, I'll be all right. So Nia Jax ended up telling him to be careful because they still have to celebrate his win over Shayna. So Nia ended up saying that she's going to go put champagne on ice and she will be available if he needs to call her. So that was that. But who cares? So then we saw Kevin Patrick. He ended up stopping Elias backstage. Kevin Patrick was asking about how Elias ended up turning on Jaxson Ryker. Elias ended up saying to Kevin Patrick that Jaxson Ryker has become unhinged. He ended up saying that he walked with Elias at first and that he was molding him into something special. But last week, when Elias was in danger, he ended up saying that Jaxson Ryker ran away and his priorities are out of whack. So Kevin Patrick ended up pointing to Jaxson Ryker beating Styles last week. And Elias ended up taking credit. So Elias then ended up giving Ryker some praise as an athlete. But he ended up saying that he's too unpredictable. And that's a danger to him. So Elias ended up saying that WWE is going back on the road. And the idea of sitting in a car traveling with Jaxson Ryker makes him sick. And he doesn't want to be around Jaxson Ryker anymore. So Elias ended up walking off. And that was that. So Elias hopefully goes back to catering. Who wants to see Elias on TV? I know I don't. Jaxson Ryker, probably going to be sitting there with him in catering. So then we had Alexa's Playground with Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss was sitting on a swing along with her doll Lily. So Alexa ended up introducing her and Lily's new friend, Reginald. So Reginald ended up walking in, sat on the other swing. Alexa Bliss ended up promising Reginald that she won't bite, but can't say the same for Lily. So Bliss ended up asking if she can call him Reggie. So Bliss ended up congratulating Reginald on the win over Shayna, and she ended up asking Reginald how he feels. Reginald ended up telling Bliss that his leg is taped up, and he ended up saying besides that, he feels great. So Alexa Bliss ended up interrupting, and she ended up saying that Lily has a question for Reginald. So we had Lily wanted to know about Reginald's time with Cirque du Soleil. Oh, glad they mentioned that, because that's all he does when he's in the match, doing Cirque du Soleil flips. So then he was attacked by Shayna Baszler. He was knocked out of the swing. Shayna Baszler was beating him up. Baszler ended up tossing Reginald away. Baszler ended up taking a seat on the swing. So she was looking at Alexa Bliss. Bliss ended up saying that she hates to break it to Shayna, but Shayna wasn't invited to play with her and Lily on the playground, and only because Lily doesn't like her. So Shayna Baszler ended up saying that Alexa Bliss is becoming a big problem, and we just saw how she handles the problems. So Baszler ended up saying that before this thing gets out of hand, her and Bliss need to have a chat. So Shayna Baszler ended up telling Alexa Bliss that she will see her next week. So Shayna then ended up kneeling down, and she ended up telling Lily, "Oh, you're just a stupid doll." So Shayna ended up walking off. So Bliss ended up looking at Lily, and that was that. Alexa Bliss had a crazy look in her eye. So it looks like we're going to be seeing the match next week. Alexa Bliss and Shayna Baszler. So then we saw the Viking Raiders and Mansoor backstage. Mansoor, it was, 3 weeks since he was last seen on Monday Night Raw in his Raw debut match. So they were talking about going back on tour. And the Viking Raiders ended up telling Mansoor that he needs a chant or a war cry to get the fans pumped up. So Mansoor was practicing a yell, and the Viking Raiders ended up giving him props for it. And they ended up telling him, don't forget to have fun out there. So the Viking Raiders end up wishing Mansoor good luck, and they end up walking off. Then we see Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali end up walking up, and he end up warning Mansoor about making friends here, because they will stab you in the back. So he ended up telling Mansoor, don't trust them or anyone else here. So Mansoor ended up asking Mustafa Ali, why should he trust him? So Mustafa Ali ended up responding. He ended up telling Mansoor, now he's getting it. So that was that. So then we saw Kevin Patrick. Kevin Patrick ended up entering MVP and Bobby Lashley's locker room. And, of course, they were still with the woman from earlier. Kevin Patrick ended up asking if they have a preferred winner tonight. MVP ended up saying, sure, they would love to know who will be the loser at Hell in a Cell. And MVP went on to say that he has some praise for both KOFI and McIntyre. And he says that he can respect their stories, but not them as wrestlers. So Bobby Lashley ended up reminding us that he has wins over both McIntyre and KOFI. And he ended up saying that neither will take the WWE Championship from him. MVP ended up saying that they would like to watch this match from ringside. But Adam Pearce has prevented that. But he ended up saying that being in their suite or the locker room with these women and drinking champagne is better than a 90-day suspension with no pay. So Lashley ended up mentioning how no one can stop the Almighty era. So that was basically that. Main event. KOFI Kingston versus Drew McIntyre. Winner of the match will face Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship at Hell in a Cell. And this was a good main event. This was a enjoyable, good match here between KOFI and Drew McIntyre. The match started off with Kofi ended up charging at McIntyre. McIntyre ended up ramming Kofi into the corner. McIntyre delivered a chop to Kofi. Kofi ended up scrambling McIntyre away, but McIntyre ended up come back and rocked Kofi into another corner. Kofi ended up going for a counter and rolled McIntyre up for a 1 count. Kofi ended up doing another quick pin attempt, but McIntyre ended up leveling Kofi with the right. He also delivered a chop to put Kofi back down to the mat. McIntyre then scooped Kofi up and charged into the ropes. Kofi ended up sending him over the top rope out to the floor. And he was hanging on to stay up. McIntyre was hanging on to stay up. And Kofi then leapt backwards and delivered a splash onto McIntyre on the floor. So Kofi ended up fighting back, but McIntyre ended up leveling Kofi with a Glasgow Kiss headbutt. McIntyre then powered Kofi up from the mat and delivered a suplex. McIntyre ended up going for the cover, but Kofi ended up kicking out. McIntyre ended up beating Kofi back into the corner. He was working him over while Kofi was down. Kofi ended up blocking a clothesline, and he then applied the guillotine to McIntyre. McIntyre ended up powering up for a suplex, but Kofi ended up countering that, and he rolled up McIntyre for a 2 count. Kofi ended up coming right back. He ended up rocking McIntyre, kicked him in the face. So Kofi ended up springboarding with a splash, but McIntyre ended up kicking out at 2. So Kofi ended up keeping control of McIntyre in the corner. He delivered a running forearm strike. And Kofi delivered another jumping strike to McIntyre. He then tried to charge in again, but McIntyre ended up dodging it, launched Kofi over his head. McIntyre delivered a overhead throw to Kofi across the ring. So at the end of the match, McIntyre ended up delivering a Claymore because Kofi leapt from the top. And this was a good spot here in the match where Kofi leapt from the top. Kofi jumped off the top, and McIntyre ended up meeting Kofi in midair with a Claymore out of nowhere. And that was an awesome spot here in this match. Just when Kofi leapt off the top and I saw McIntyre deliver the Claymore from midair, I was like, whoa, that was crazy to see. So McIntyre ended up crawling over on Kofi. He ended up getting the pin. There you go. Drew McIntyre ended up winning the match. So now it'll be Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley at Hell in a Cell with the WWE Championship on the line, which I knew was going to happen. I knew McIntyre was going to face Bobby Lashley at Hell in a Cell. So post-match, Kofi was offering a handshake to McIntyre for respect. They end up shaking hands. And then out came MVP and Bobby Lashley. McIntyre was posing in the corner. He was yelling up at the stage as MVP and Bobby Lashley were looking on. And that was how Monday Night Raw went off the air. But overall, this was a good main event. It was very enjoyable. That spot in the match where Kofi leapt off the top and McIntyre ended up catching Kofi in midair with a Claymore. That was a sick spot there. But overall, Monday Night Raw tonight, how it is every single week, awful show. Just absolutely terrible. Show gets worse and worse every single week. It is literally one of the worst pro wrestling shows on television. And they're just digging themselves even more deeper with rematches every single week. It's like there's no originality in creative for Monday Night Raw. They're literally bankrupt. They're literally bankrupt with ideas. It's terrible. It is absolutely awful. So anyways, That's it for my review of tonight's Monday Night Raw. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all